Canada has just passed a law that grants drug possession immunity in cases of overdosing. So this is actually an amendment to a 1996 law, and it was known as the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, but it has now been amended with what they are calling the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Act. And let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of what they are saying. So first, they define what an overdose is. For the purposes of this section, overdose means a physiological event induced by the introduction of a controlled substance into the body of a person that results in a life-threatening situation that a reasonable person would believe requires emergency medical or law enforcement assistance. And now to the exemption from possession of substance charges, it goes on to say, no one who seeks emergency medical or law enforcement assistance because that person or another person is suffering from an overdose is to be charged or convicted under subsection 4(1) if the evidence in support of that offense was obtained or discovered as a result of that person having sought assistance or having remained at the scene. So I don't know. I mean, I've been hearing about this on Reddit. That's where I first learned about the law, and I think it's a really interesting way to deal with people who are struggling from the throes of addiction, which we know you can't put the fault on someone who's addicted to drugs. I know that obviously you want there to be consequences and for them to shoulder some responsibility. I understand that, but if someone is overdosing, yeah, I think to me this feels like a compassionate move in the right direction for drug laws, and it's something that I wonder we'll ever see in the United States. I strongly doubt that we will, given where we're at.
Maybe in some cities, and the federal government will be like, "Fuck that."
But my question for you is, obviously, when someone is addicted to drugs, they're not in the correct state of mind, and sort of they're feeling very volatile, and they can be very manipulative. Do you think that this could be abused? Sort of knowing that, okay, I'm not gonna, if my friend's overdosing and or my friend could be kind of overdosing, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's always the possibility of that happening, but I think overall it's a net positive of doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually thinking about it. It's so funny how being from America, you always think in punitive terms. You want there to be some sort of consequence if this does happen. So like, I don't see like why they wouldn't maybe make a fine for people that overdose. But then a lot of these people that do overdose, they don't even have enough money to begin with. So like that just keeps them down in this spiral of addiction.
And moreover, who I think this law protects is someone who's at the scene who might also be experimenting with drugs or abusing drugs.
But they didn't overdose.
But they didn't overdose, and they're calling to help their friend. And this sort of reminds me of kind of a rule that my parents had growing up, where it's, you're never going to get in trouble if you need help. If you need help for whatever situation you found yourself in, even if it's one that we would not have allowed if you had asked us, you're not gonna get in trouble for that. Now there might be consequences after the fact. For example, like you might be
grounded,
but even that means that you're being punished for it. Like I was never yelled at if my friend needed a ride home and it was really late at night, and I was like, Dad, I really like my friend can't walk. She got really blackout, and can you help us? It was never even yelled at or discussed. It was just the next day if I wanted to go out, it was like, well, you know what happened yesterday. Probably not. Like you're probably not going to be going out.
Yeah.
So this new amendment reminds me of that, and I think that the word that you used, compassionate, I think perfectly sums up this law. That you are dealing with drug addicts with compassion, and that you are treating an illness rather than treating a criminal.
Yeah. Canada has been at the forefront of this. I remember 10 years ago when I was in Vancouver, my cousin told me there's a whole area of the city where like needles are legal, basically. People go there, and that's like a designated area for people who are drug addicts to go and get high. And the reason behind that is because then they can limit it to one specific area and they can monitor that area. And if people get sick, if they overdose, they can help them right there. It's not just spread out everywhere. Basically like the 3rd season of The Wire. But this is good. This is a really progressive move, so less people are dying.
Yeah, and I think
if you were asked a lot of Americans, they're like, well, yeah, they deserve to die.
And usually this is, I mean, if someone's overdosing, that's about as that's rock bottom. You know what I mean? And that's when someone needs help.
Yeah.
And they need the people that are around them in that time, or themselves if they can dial 911. That's when they need to reach out for help. And it breaks my heart to think of the people who prior to this law, because obviously this came about because they felt that there was a need for it.
It's a human rights issue.
Right, that they were afraid to ask for help because they didn't want to be arrested. And I think now they've sort of opened that up, where it's like, if you are at your rock bottom, Canada will not turn its back on you and and slam you in prison. It doesn't mean that drug use is encouraged at all. It's discouraged, but let's help you get to help.
And they're not saying they're just gonna let you go willy-nilly free afterwards. I'm sure they're gonna bombard you with a bunch of programs to get help.
Yeah, it's just that any evidence that they take at the scene cannot be used against you, and whatever you're on, whatever substance you're on, cannot be used against you. It's sort of just like striking a deal. In the way that, I know we've covered a little bit before on Murder with Friends, for example, in like the Robert Hansen case where he was killing prostitutes. A lot of police had to go to prostitutes and say, what do you guys know? Do you have any information? Disclaimer, we are not going to arrest you for being a prostitute. We just need information. And I think that sort of back and forth between the drug and criminal underworld with people that have just fallen victim to just the worst that humanity has to offer. I think that's good. That's what we want law enforcement to be able to make it a safer place for everyone, even for people who are addicted to drugs. So guys, we want to hear from you in the comment section below. What do you think about this new law that Canada has passed? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we will see you next time on Pop Trigger.